Good day to everyone. I am here to discuss with you the literary comparison together with my classmate Gerly, YUNER, Diaz. So what is literary comparison? Literary comparison. Comparison is a rhetorical or literary device in which a writer compares or contrasts two people, places, things, or ideas. So example, as lazy as a snail. In our everyday life, we compare people and things to express ourselves vividly. So when we say someone is as lazy as a snail, you compare two different entities to show similarity and someone's laziness to the slow pace of a snail. So comparisons occurs in literary works frequently. Writers and poets use comparison in order to link their feeling about a thing to something reader can understand. So there are numerous devices in literature that compare two different things to show the similarity between them, such as simile, metaphor, and analogy. So what is metaphor? A metaphor makes a hidden comparison between two things or objects that are dissimilar to each other, but have some characteristics common between them. So here is the example. All the world's a stage and men and women merely players. This line is from As You Like It by William Shakespeare. Shakespeare uses a metaphor of a stage to describe the world and compares men and women living in the world with players. So the next one is simile. A simile is an open comparison between two things or objects to show similarities between them. So here is the example. Elderly American ladies leaning on their canes listed toward me like towers of Pisa. This line is from Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. In this line, Vladimir Nabokov compares old women leaning on their sticks to the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Here the comparison, made between two contrasting things, creates a hilarious effect. So the next one is analogy. An analogy aims to explaining an unfair familiar idea or thing by comparing it to something that is familiar. So the example is, the white mares of the moon rush along the sky, beating their golden hooves upon the glass heavens. This line is from Night Clouds, written by Emily Lowell. So Amy contracts an analogy between clouds and mares. She compares the movement of the white clouds in the sky at night with the movement of white mares on the ground. The above examples of comparison help us realize that in general, writers utilize different kinds of comparison to link an unfamiliar or new idea to common and familiar objects. It helps readers to comprehend a new idea which may have been difficult for them to understand otherwise. The understanding of a new idea turns out to be simpler when viewed with a comparison to something that is familiar to them.
A comparative analysis of English language teaching.
We use sentences every day, but have you ever thought about exactly what a sentence is? A sentence structure. It is a basic part of language. It is the way a sentence is arranged grammatically. There are three basic questions. The first one is it a simple sentence, a compound sentence, or a complex sentence? The second one is, if the sentence includes a dependent clause or phrase, is the dependent clause or phrase parenthetical or defining? And the last one is, does the sentence begin with the main clause or with an introductory word, phrase, or dependent clause? Simple sentence is also known as a clausal sentence. It may have a modifier besides a subject, verb, and object. Though it is simple, sometimes it can have compound verbs and compound subjects. It may or may not use commas, but it stays simple in construction. Example of simple sentence. Mary writes. It is the simplest sort of a simple sentence, containing just a subject, Mary, and a verb writes. Mary writes me letters. It is still simple sentence. So now the verb has the direct object, letters, and the indirect object, me. Mary and John write. It is also a simple sentence. So it has the compound subject, Mary and John. Mary writes and telephones. It is is a simple sentence, so it has the compound predicate rights and telephones. Until recently, Mary and John, my grandchildren, wrote me letter twice a month and telephone every Sunday afternoon. It is a simple sentence, even though it includes an introductory adverbial phrase, a compound subject with an appositive, a compound predicate, a direct and indirect object for one of the verbs, and an adverbial phrase for each of the verbs. It is simple because, in spite of its complexity and its 3 commas, it still merely connects one subject or set of objects to one action or set of actions. The next one is compound sentences. It is a merely group of 2 or more simple sentences that have been made and sentenced by punctuating them appropriately and often by using a conjunction such as and. Example of compound sentence. John writes and Mary telephones is a compound sentence. It consists of 2 clauses, either of which could stand alone. John writes, Mary telephones. They are independent clause. Not only does each have its own subject and predicate, but neither one is dependent on the other. Complex sentences. It is a sentence that contains an independent clause and one or more dependent clause. Example of complex sentences. John, who is my grandson, doesn't write anymore, contains the dependent clause, who is my grandson. As can be seen in the examples, a simple sentence may have quite a lot of internal punctuation, and a compound or complex sentence may have very little, although usually a compound sentence has at least a comma. We may not be able to identify a sentence as simple, compound, or complex, but to punctuate it properly, we must answer the second and third of the 3 questions listed at the beginning of the rule. We must determine whether any dependent constructions are parenthetical or defining, and whether the sentence begins with the main clause. One part of sentence may be like a parenthetical remark helpful, perhaps even very important, but not essential to the meaning of the rest of the sentence. Another part may actually define the meaning and hence be essential. Parenthetical constructions are often called non-restrictive because they do not restrict the meaning of the word or words they relate to, but only expand at that meaning. They could be removed from the sentence without changing the basic meaning of the subject-predicate combination that makes up the basic sentences. Example: his son, who is a good swimmer, made the rescue, contains the parenthetical dependent clause, who is a good swimmer. In the example above, his son made the rescue is the basic sentence, and its meaning is not changed by the parenthetical, who is a good swimmer. Note, however, that the parenthetical construction is not necessarily of less importance to the overall meaning, the overall effect on the reader, than other parts of the sentence containing it. The example of parenthetical constructions might lead one to conclude that such constructions must always be set up by punctuation. However, sometimes they are not. In John, as well as his brothers, has received life-saving training, the phrase "as well as his brother" is parenthetical.